Hey everybody, we are in video 4 for chapter 5, the fourth and last video, and we're looking at those last two approaches to the interorganizational relationship framework. So in the last video, we looked at resource dependence theory and collaborative networks. In this video, we're going to talk about population ecology perspective and institutionalism. So, the population ecology perspective was developed by economists Michael Hannon and John Freeman, and it focuses on the organizational diversity and adaptation within the populations. So, we're going to talk about new organizations coming into a market and how that kind of comes in and diversifies, and which organizations are the ones that can adapt to the changes and which organizations don't. So the population, when we're using the word population, we're not talking about a population of people. We're talking about a set of organizations that they are engaged in similar activities with similar patterns of resource utilization and outcomes. Okay, so not people, organizations. So we know that organizations within the same population compete for resources and for customers, right? That's just the market, right? We're just describing the market there. So why are new organizational forms? Actually, let me define organizational forms for you so that makes sense. So when they talk about organizational form, they're talking about like the characteristics that make up what makes you you. So we're going to eventually use an example of Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And so let's look at their two different forms. So Barnes & Noble is a brick and mortar bookstore, right? They always have been. They sell some gift items too, but they largely sell books, and they have a coffee shop. And that's them, right? That's their form. Where Amazon came in as a completely new form, started off with just books. So let's just for now call them a bookseller, even though we know that these days they sell everything under the sun. But Amazon is an online business. Um, they they also sell books, but because they're online, they will have the ability to adapt to a market that they can add all these other products super easily. Um, they don't have the limitations of the brick and mortar store, and they can ship, one or two books easily to a customer, or that wasn't something that Barnes and Noble was doing. So we can see those two different forms. So why are new organizational forms that create such diversity constantly appearing? That's a question that this chapter posed. So the answer is that because individual organization adaptation is severely limited compared to the changes demanded by the environment. So what does that mean? So the external environment that these companies are operating in is constantly changing, right? We've talked about the environmental scanning that happens as businesses have to keep track of what's happening, and so as that's constantly changing, some businesses can adapt to that, and some of them can't. And we're talking existing businesses now, but the ones that are most suited to adapt are the new ones that actually create themselves to fit whatever that new thing is in the market or in the population. So um, innovations within those populations are often taking place through the birth of new organizations as opposed to the existing ones because of that limited ability to adapt. We see a lot more of those innovations coming from new businesses as opposed to the existing ones. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that is in just a minute. But so a lot of those large existing organizations end up just becoming dinosaurs, if they are not adapting to the changes. Um, and according to this population ecology perspective, when you're looking at an organization's population as a whole, the changing environment will determine who will survive and fail. Okay, so that it kind of sounds like the ecology that we talk about with biology, right? With the like natural selection, who's going to survive and who's going to fail. And they can see the old organizations that are likely to decline or fail if they are not keeping up with whatever the changes are, and the ones that are more suited to that changing environment and wherever the characteristics of the environment are now, and that those are going to be the ones that are more likely to survive. So why do those established organizations have such a hard time adapting? So one of them is that they they're limited in their ability to change, and one of the reasons is they have a heavy investment in their plants and their equipment and in their specialized personnel. So if they have to invest in changes to their plants or completely new plants, in equipment and in people and their human resources, then that's going to be another huge investment that they've already made that. They have limited information about that new all those new changes. Everybody kind of does have limited information about it because it's just happening real time. It's constantly changing. um, the established viewpoints of the decision makers in the organization, they're just set in their ways. There might be some hubris involved, just thinking, hey, I know how to do this. I don't need anybody to come in and tell me how to change. They probably have a successful history that's making it easy to justify not changing, um, even though they're not seeing how they can, how their history might change in going into the future. And then it's very difficult to change corporate culture if that needs to happen. So we mentioned the differences with Barnes and Noble struggling to compete with Amazon, and we talked about the two forms. And Barnes and Noble was very slow to move online and still hasn't completely um, done the same things that Amazon has done. Let's see. I think then we're going to get to the process of ecological change. There's 3 stages in ecological change that's part of this population ecology perspective. One is variation, so the appearance of new and diverse forms. So we're starting to see some variation in the forms of businesses in that population. And then 2 is selection, so whether or not that new form of business is suited to that environment. If they are, then they are selected. They can live another day. And then retention is the third one. And so this is when those selected business forms, they're preserved and kind of institutionalized. They become the new way of doing business in that industry. Okay. And then I'm just going to say a couple things about um, the fourth approach for the interorganizational relationships. Every time I say that, it just feels like a longer, longer word. So the institutional perspective describes how organizations survive and succeed through congruence between the organization and the expectations from the environment. And the institutional environment is composed of norms and values from their stakeholders. So, in order to become an institutionalized organization, and what we mean by that isn't, like an institution, but we mean like they become like a pillar in the industry, that kind of thing. So, in order to reach that level, they have to be accepted by all of the stakeholders to the point that it's just like part of their culture, right? So McDonald's, if you think about McDonald's, it's just like part of the fabric of America. God help us, right? But when they became a fast food restaurant, they worked themselves to the point of just being an institutionalized pillar of the environment that they were operating in. So, okay, so that is where we're going to stop for this video. And so that takes us to the end of the videos for week 2. And I hope some of this is helping fill in some gaps or explain some things that might be a little more difficult as you're reading. But we'll see you in week 3.